All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Pei Gimel, Maseches Pesachim. We got to the Mishnah on the top. Hopefully, anyone has to leave early. We get to the Mishnah Mit Hashem on Pei Daled Amud Aleph on the top. So the Mishnah says, "Hatzamos v'agidib v'hanaisar." So hatzamos, bones, gidib, sinews, v'hanaisar, and the leftover meat. Yisrfu b'shisha asar. You go ahead and you burn that on the 16th. Now let's just think about it for a second, right? So they offer the Korban Pesach on the 14th. Leil Seder is the night of the 15th. The next morning is Yantif, right? You do not burn it on Yantif. You wait till the first day, which is the 16th in the morning. Chal Kazan Lios b'Shabbos. However, if it turns out to be on Shabbos, the 16th, then Yisro b'Yudzayin. Then you burn on the 17th. So let's say Pesach was on Friday, right? And therefore the 16th is Saturday. So you wait till the 17th, which is Sunday. If you change the Deichen, unless the Shabbos was the end, because it doesn't Deichen, not Shabbos and not Yantif. Fine. Zok the Gemara. Omer Rav Mari bar Ravu Omer Rabbi Yitzchak Atzamos Kadshim Sheshimshu Naisar Metaminasei Yadayim Hoivanasim Basar Basis L'Davarasa. Now, here is a statement we're going to be discussing, and then it said in the name of Rabbi Yitzchak. So that the bones of Kadshim, all right, bones of Kadshim that have Naisar in them, right? We're going to discuss in terms of the marrow, right, inside the bones, and therefore the bones itself are basically part of holding the marrow. So therefore, since those are matame asayadayim, because remember it has the meat inside, this marrow, which is edible, right, and the marrow turns into naisar. So therefore, the bones are now holding the naisar. So the bones itself, right, become a basis of the devarasar. They become basically a basis of it, right? It's considered to be something which is it's right. It's the basis. It's the base of something which is aser, and therefore. And since B'Tayis Dayim, we say that's the reason you have to go ahead and so that was a statement. So let's see. So name of Messiah. Let's say our mission is a proof. If you have bones and sinews and naisar yisrfu l'tazayin, you go ahead. Our mission says go ahead and burn. Let's just discuss the bones. Burn the bones, right? Burn the fire on the 16th. Now, why is that? So hani and samos hekedam. What's the because of the bones? Ilam de les bumach. If we're talking about there's no marrow inside of lamu b'streifa. Why do you need a seven lishtinu? Right? Just go ahead and toss them. Ella pshit, right? Because there's no issue with it. Why just get rid of the bones? Ella pshit. I rather it's obvious. These two, I rather it must be talking about a case where there is marrow inside it. And if you say therefore, if it's considered to be basically it's containing the naisar, therefore it's considered to be amatul hachi by a sefer. That's why you have to go ahead and burn it. Ella yamarta shimish naisar la milsi. But if you say that if the fact that it held naisar, right? So then so the bones are holding the naisar, right? If it's not anything, right? If it says nothing, why do you have to go ahead and burn the bones? Go ahead and break them. Right? Go ahead, break out the bones, burn the marrow, and throw away the bones, right? Why do you have to go ahead and destroy the bones? It must be that the bones are basically considered to be a basis for the naisar. Rather, let's learn from here that the fact that it's serving the naisar, right? It's shimush the naisar, therefore it's considered to be something which we have to go ahead and burn. So I mean, they say no, lo. Really, it's not considered something. When the pasuk says the etzem lo sishrubo, right? You should not break a bone, right? It's because shevafilu b'pasel. In other words. We can't break a bone, not even a puzzle bone. So your suggestion was, just go ahead and break out the bone, burn the marrow, throw away the bone. Well, you can't break the bone to get to the marrow. So therefore, you have to go ahead and destroy the bone also. So afil of a puzzle. Gemara says afil of puzzle. But now we go to the Mishnah about Hamaiser Batar. The Mishnah on tomorrow's daf. Mishnah says over there Hamaiser Batar, one who leaves over tar meat. Vashayver Batame, or one who goes ahead and he breaks a tame, right, a bone from a tame carbon. Eino sefegas arbai. So he does not get malchus. So what do you see over there? If something is tame, right, then there's no issue of breaking the bone. And you just said, well, what do you mean? You just said by naisar, right, you can't go ahead and break the bone. Well, if it's already naisar, then why can't you break the bone? It's already left over the next morning. So like kasha, no, it's not a contradiction. Kancha isola shasa kasher, kancha isola shasa kasher. There's a difference. One had a case of shasa kasher. One was a case it was a good korban, and then it was just left over. And since it was fit So therefore, there's still it's so applicable to say that you can't go ahead and break the bone. However, the other case, if it never had a shasa kosher, it was never fit for a korban, it became tamei, right? Before, right, the blood was sprinkled. So therefore, since it never had shasa kosher, therefore the violation of breaking the bone would not apply, which is like the Mishnah later on. What is the difference between that which had a shasa kosher and that which did not? And that is Rabbi Yaakov. That is the opinion of Rabbi Yaakov. The Tanya, the pasuk says, "The etzem lo yisishru bo." In the bone you shall not break. So bo bekosher, v'lo b'pasul. So over there, the Tanakhama says, right, when it said can't bring a bone, it's only with a kosher korban. But if it's a tummy korban or it's nice or whatever it is, you can go ahead and break it. And Rabbi Yaakov says, if it one time it was good, the korban was good, let's say they became tamei, then there is a violation of shiras etzem, which would be like our case, right? Because the meat was good, the marrow was good on the inside, and then it was left to the next morning. So now the meat is inside is considered to be nicer, it's considered to be left over to the next morning, which is a psul, and therefore it has to be destroyed. However, but let's say it was never fit for eating. Therefore, there is no violation of breaking the bone. And Rabbi Shimon over there says, there is no issue at all of breaking a bone even if it had a shasa kosher, it's never a violation if it's not kosher. Fine. Now we're asking the kasha. We're going to be a couple of terusim. So here's the kasha. Let's understand the kasha. Kasha is meisvei. We have a brayso that says call it samas hakachim ain to sreifa. All bones of kachim do not require sreifa. Chutz miat samas pesach, except for the bones of the korban pesach. Mipnei takala, right? Because of something bad that will happen from it. Now. So remember, we start off our Gemara today with a statement saying that the bones need to be broken, right? Why? Because they're basis to Naisar, right? They're Shimshul Naisar Matamis Yadayim, right? That's what we said. Since they're basis, therefore their bones are no good. Over here, there's a distinction between Atzamas Kachim, right? Bones of regular Kachim, your Shlomim, your Chatas, whatever it is, versus the bones of the bones of Korban Pesach, which have to be burnt. Why? If we're talking about bones that do not have any sort of marrow inside it, why do you have to go ahead and burn it, right? Right? There's no reason to go ahead and destroy the bones, right? There's nothing inside. There's no meat inside. There's no nicer anywhere, right? Ella, rather, there must be marrow. Now, if you think, like was suggested in the beginning of our Gemara of Rav Mari Bar Rav, the name of Rabbi Yitzchak, which he suggested that Yitzchak as a Shemesh Naisa Milsi, that the fact that Shemesh Naisa Milsi, Atzamas Kachim Amai into Nisreifa. Why regular Kachim bones, right? Regular Kachim also have Naisar, right? Naisar is not just a halacha by Korban Pesach. Any Korban, if you leave it beyond its Zman, it's called Naisar. So why do those bones not have to be, if you say it's always a psul, if it contains Naisar, it has to be burnt. So why do we say Atzamas Kachim don't have to be burnt and the Korban Pesach do? That's the kasha. So Omar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Hakma Eskinan Kegoin Shematzim Chalutzim. They were empty. They were broken. Right? They were broken. They were empty. So now here's Nachman. Atzamas Kachim Dein Behem Mishum Shvias Etzem. When it comes to the bones of Kachim, since there is no violation of breaking bones of a regular korban, so Kami Dinahavi Naisar Chalitzina Below Havi Shimush Naisar Below by Streifa. Those, since there's no violation of breaking those bones, what happened? They broke over the bones, they took out the marrow, and then the bones were never holding the nicer. However, when Atzamas Pesach, and therefore you don't have to go ahead and burn the bones. However, when it comes to the bones of the Korban Pesach, the Yesh B'Hem Mishum Shivas Etzem, whereas you're not allowed to go ahead and break the bones, so therefore they couldn't go ahead and break it up and take the marrow out, right? So therefore, the Basa the Havi Nicer, Havi the Chatzinu. Right after the Naisar, that's when it was taken out because you can't bring it up before. Naisar, and therefore these bones contain the marrow because they couldn't have been broken over before it became Naisar, and therefore by Yisreifa, and therefore it requires to be burnt. That's the difference because the difference is when did you break it over? Did you break it over before it became Naisar or after? By Kachim, it was broken over before because there's no issue of breaking bones. But when it comes to Korban Pesach, you can't break a bone of a kosher korban, and therefore it would never contain the Naisar. And Razid Omar Hachabai Eskinan, he says, no, we're talking about a case of what? Kigon, for instance, turn to the top of the page, right? Kigon, Shematzan Tziburin, right? He found basically a pile of broken bones, right? Now, Umehen Chalusim, some of them were broken open. So now, that's the case. We said the kudshim. So that case, we pile a bunch of bones. So the kudshim said you have to are okay, and the Korban Pesach he says those bones you have to burn. Why? What's going on here? So Atzamas kudshim. When it comes to the kudshim, the ein behem mishum shvias etzem. When it comes to kudshim, when you don't, there is no issue of breaking open bones. Lakulu havi cholatz lu v'achalu. Right? People like marrow. Therefore, they broke open all those bones and he took out the marrow, and that was prior to it becoming nicer. Blow by seifa, and therefore it doesn't require seifa. However, at Atzamas Pesach, but however, when it comes to the bones of the Korban Pesach, you can't go ahead and break it up and take out the marrow. Maybe that the ones on top, right? Those were the ones that are broken, right? In other words, over here we're talking about a case of where he broke them open, right? But only the top ones are broke open, and therefore we can't assume that anything that does not contain marrow, right? Because only the ones that are open, right, they happen to break on their own, but they weren't broken open by an individual, right? So therefore, that which they don't have, it must be maybe they didn't have nicer. But the stuff underneath in the pile, right, the stuff that's not broken, perhaps there's marrow inside it, and no one would have broken open the bones because you're not allowed to go ahead and break open with the Pesach, and therefore that's all the bones there require sreifa. Fine. Now that was part A of this year. Now part B. We are six lines from the top. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel Kol Hagidin Basar Chutz Gidei Tzar. All sinews are considered to be basar, considered to be flesh. It's considered to be you eat them, right? That's something which is edible, right? It's part of the basar of the Korban Pesach, except for the sinews of the tzar of the neck. They're like wood, they're tough, and therefore does not qualify as meat. Now, let's look at our Mishnah. Bones and sinews and leftover meat, you go ahead and you burn it on the 16th. So now, Hanigidin, these sinews we're talking about. Well, which case are we talking about? If we're talking about, now you just said all sinews are considered to be meat, except for the ones in the neck. If you're talking about, let's say, the other sinews, which are, let's say, located in I don't know where they are, let's say knees, right? Who knows, right? In their legs. Those sinews are in their legs. We'll get to the Gidei Nasha later on, but it says those sinews are the Gidei Basar. Eat it. Why do you have to go ahead and burn it, right? If it's considered to be Basar, like Rav Yehuda Marav just suggested, so eat it. Why do you tell me you have to go ahead and burn it, right? You should just eat it, right? And if it's leftover, the leftover nicer, you have to go ahead and burn it. Well, haina nicer, that's the third word of that statement, right? That we said bones, sinews, and leftover. So if the sinews are leftovers, that's called nicer, right? It's the same thing. Ella, rather not pshita gidei tzar. Rather, we must be talking about the sinews of the neck, and those are the ones that have to leave over and burn. As a if you want to say that those considered to be flesh, there's this flesh, people don't like to eat it, so they leave it over. So that's the reason why it requires sreifa. But if you hold it's not considered to be basar, right? It's like wood, right? It's like eitz ba'almahu, right? It's like wood. Why are you requiring to burn it? Remember, you don't have to burn non-food, right? Why do we say bones have to be burnt? You don't need bones. Well, because there's marrow inside it, and we said before, because it contained the nicer, it's considered to be a basis, so therefore you have to go ahead and destroy it. It's matame. But the sinews, what's going on with the sinews? If it's not basar, then why do you got to burn it? And if it's basar, go eat it, right? So elim yata lav basar nina lamalus reifos. Sam Rav Chizda lo yinitzcha ela legid hanasha. We're talking about the gid hanasha, right? Part of in the animal, right, in the leg, right, there's a sinu that is forbidden, the gid hanasha. Forgot the name of the gid hanasha. All right, fine. So it's the gid hanasha. What did he say? Let me see if in English, whatever it's called. Right. 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 All right. Anyway, so one of the nerves in the legs is the gid hanasha, and therefore that is the forbidden part. Now we know one is not allowed to go to eat gid hanasha. So if it's meat, but you can't eat it, so therefore you have to go ahead and destroy it, right? So now it makes sense. We're talking about the gid hanasha. The aliba the Rabbi Yehuda, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the Tani we learn in Rabbi Yehuda Imer, Eino noheg ela bi'achas. The gid hanasha, right, is only in one of the legs, right? Only one of the legs of the animal in the back legs. There's two back legs. There's only one of them is the real gid hanasha. And we think it is the right one, right? The right one as opposed to the left. right? So we think it's the right one, and therefore that's the one. So and there's one, the Ella Tisha the Sfuki. So now what we say, what's going on over here? So we think it's the right one, we're not certain. So since you're not, if we were certain, right? So then, so since in this case we are not certain, so therefore you can't go ahead and eat it, but you can't and you can't eat the other one, and therefore you go ahead and you must go ahead and burn it and destroy it, right? But we're not certain. Since we're not certain, if we knew for sure, right, then we could throw it away, right? But since we think it's the right one, so therefore we have to treat it like almost as a suffix and go ahead and burn and destroy it. Because if it was something, because only if we knew for a fact that it was the gid anasha and it's not basar because you don't eat it, right? So therefore you can go ahead and throw it away, right? But since we think we're 90% sure, so therefore we treat it l'chumra and require it to have streifa. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, the Ella Tifshat the Svuki mistake. Let's say it's a suffix on Rabbi Yehuda, right? Let's say it's a suffix on Rabbi Yehuda, because if you say it's Rabbi Yehuda is 100% certain it's the right, because then if we know for sure the right one is good and the left one is bad, so then the opposite, the right one is bad. You can go ahead and throw that one away and you can eat the other one, right? The exact same sinu get an usha from the left leg. So lam leis treifa, and therefore, why would you have to go ahead and burn the gid anasha? Since it's not basar, you can go ahead and throw it away. It's an isser. So Amar Rav Ika Bar Chinana Kagayin Shehukro L'Seif Nisarva. Really, there's a suffix as to what Rabbi Yehuda holds, and therefore we can't really go ahead and assume what he holds, because over here maybe we're talking about a case where he knew which was the right one, which was the left one, and maybe at that point in time you can go ahead and throw it away. He doesn't require to burn it. But since he mixed them both up, he don't know which one's the right, which one's the left. Therefore, both of them require burning. You can't go ahead and just throw it away because it might be basar, and if it's basar, then it becomes nicer, and then you have to go ahead and burn it. You can't just go ahead and throw it away, and that was the case there. And Rav Ashi Omar Lo Nitzacha Ella L'Shmano the Gid Anasha. That what you said, the gid has to be go ahead and burnt, requires sreifa, is only referring to the fat around the gid anasha. The time of the rice, shmena mutter. Really, the fats around the gid anasha is mutter to eat. However, Yisrael is kadoshim; they are holy, right? They're concerned; they don't want to eat too much of the, or perhaps do an isser. So therefore, they're extra machman themselves, and therefore they're noheg that part isser. So even though lamaisa it's basar, right? It's mutter, but they treat it as isser. So therefore, this fat of the gid anasha, that's what we're talking about. You burn because they can't eat it because they're machmer themselves, but you also can't destroy it away because the mice it's basar. So therefore, you go ahead and you burn it on the 16th. That basar. Arvida Amar the chitzad. There's two different gid anashas: the inner one and the outer one. We're talking about the outer one. Right? So it says like Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel. Beis gidim hein. There are two gidim in the leg, and each leg primi hasamach le'etzam. There is the one, the inner one that's close to the bone. Aser v'chayavin alav, and that one you're chay for. However, the chitza on the outer one hasamach lebasar, which is closer to the outside, which is closer to the meat, the flesh. Aser vein chayvin ba. There, that is aser, but it's not chayiv. So therefore, that's aser, but you're not chayiv for it. So therefore, you can't necessarily go ahead and discard it. Rather, you go ahead and you burn it on the 16th. Fine. Then we say, and if Shabbos turns out on the 16th, you burn it on the 17th, right? So Zak the Gemara, towards the bottom, there is an asay to go ahead and burn the naisar, and there is a loisasay to go. Don't go ahead and burn it on Yant or on Shabbos, right? So why can't you say the asay is deichel loisasay, right? Say the asay of burning it overrides the loisasay. So the Gemara will come up with 4 terutzim. Amar Chizkiya, v'chein tana debei Chizkiya. Amar Kar, the pasuk says that loisasir mimenu ad boker v'hanoisar mimenu ad boker beish tisrofa. We actually saw this earlier. Where is this? Now that we saw this, right? We saw this in Nun Testament base, I think, right? So we darshan over there. So we said don't leave it over in the morning, right? And v'haboker beish tisrofa. That mentions the morning again, right? Leave it over, and then the morning burn it. Well, you leave it over. You don't say the morning burn it. You already told me you left it over, right? So it says, right? It says, ad boker, ad boker, right? Say ad boker again. Ad boker. It doesn't tell me because it's the next morning. I already know it's the next morning. So what is it coming to teach you? ad boker litain lo boker sheni l'sreifasa. To give you, no, it's not the first morning after, it's the second morning. The second morning is the morning you burn it, so therefore not the morning of the 15th, right, which is Yantif, rather the morning of the 16th, which is already Cholamoid and not Yantif. And Abai says, Omar, the pasuk says, Oilas Shabbos b'Shabboso, right? You do the Olah of Shabbos on Shabbos. And you don't do any other malachas. Yes, the avoda does override Shabbos. But which avoda overrides Shabbos? The avoda of Shabbos overrides Shabbos, but not the avoda of something that was from before. So therefore, and therefore, no Olah of Chol can override Shabbos or Yantif. And Rabba says, no, Amar Kar, the pasuk says, Hu levado yaseh lachem. Right, so it says for you to do malacha, only the malacha that you need. Hu levado yaseh lachem. Hu v'loy machshir levado. Right, hu v'loy machshirav. It means it and not any of its machshir, any of preparations. So now it's only something which is needed to do for the Shabbos. That is something which is permitted. However, not something that is a preparation. And levado, and it says, what is the word levado? What does that teach you? V'lo mila shaloi bizmana. And mila, which is shaloi bizmana, if mila is not done on the 8th day, then it would not override Shabbos, which is a kavachomer, right? Rashi brings down the kavachomer. We actually saw this earlier also. The kavachomer is if we know that avoda, right? Actually, I'll just look at Rashi. Top Rashi, right? It says, so lidchos here, last word of the Rashi. Umat tsaras shedeichas avoda. Tsaras. If the kohen has tsaras, he's not allowed to perform the avoda, right? So it's tsaras pushes off the avoda. The avoda deichas Shabbos. So we know the avoda can be done on Shabbos, right? So mila. Right, but bris mila is deichat tsaras. If it's tsaras in the malcha mila, you still perform the mila. So mila is stronger than tsaras, right? Tsaras is stronger than avoda, performing, doing karbanos, and that is deicha Shabbos. So maybe you think that mila is deicha Shabbos. We say no, only levado, only if it's that day, the 8th day, but otherwise, mila shlo b'zman is not over at Shabbos. And Rashi says, what's the reason why burning the Neisar is not done on the 16th or the 17th of Shabbos, or the 16th of Shabbos, you push it off, is because pasuk says Shabboson. There's an asay when it comes to Yantif, right? Rest. It's telling you to rest. Shabboson, the Yantif asay, who asay dechalos asay v'asay. In other words, because Shabbos doesn't, or Yantif doesn't just have a lois asay, do not burn. Rather, it has thou shall rest and thou shall not do malacha burn. So therefore, there's asay and a deicha lois asay, and therefore, when you have a case of just to do something versus do something opposite and don't do that, the two override the one, and therefore the assay of burning the Neisar on Shabbos does not override the assay of resting on Shabbos and the assay of do not do malacha. And we'll stop here. Everyone should have a wonderful Shabbos. Mitzvah Hashem. We will 7 o'clock on Sunday morning. Have a good day and a wonderful